I call to order the monthly meeting of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority, a regular meeting, Fort Ord Reuse Authority Board of Directors. It's Friday, December 12th, 2 o'clock. I would ask Council Member Mr. Alan Hoff if he do us the honor of leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Ellen. Okay, next soon we'll be going into closed session. In closed session, we'll be discussing conference with legal counsel, existing litigation, government code 54956.9 alpha, 2 cases. One, Keep Fort Ord Wild versus Fort Ord Reuse Authority, case number M11491. And second, the City of Marina versus Fort Ord Reuse Authority, case number M11856. Prior to going into closed session, does any member of the public wish to address the committee on any of these items we'll be discussing in closed session? Seeing nobody coming forward, public comment period is closed. We'll be adjourning an open session, reconvening next door in closed session. We'll be back as soon as we can. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you take your seat, it must be the holiday season. Everybody's so gregarious and enjoying each other's company and conversation. Okay, we're reconvening in open session. I'd ask our Attorney Counsel, Mr. John Giffen, if he would report out on closed session, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair Edelin. The board met in closed session on items 3A, 1, and 2, heard from counsel and was given the advice of counsel, and there's nothing to report out.
Thank you very much. Alina, if we could have a roll call, please.
City of Carmel by the Sea, Mayor Pro Tem Beach. Here. City of Delray Oaks, Mayor Edelin.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell.
Here.
City of Marina, Councilmember Morton. Here. City of Monterey, Vice Mayor Hoffa.
Here.
Monterey County, Supervisor Potter. Here. Monterey County, Supervisor Carcagno. Monterey County, Supervisor Parker. City of Pacific Grove, Councilmember Lucius. Here. City of Salinas, Mayor Gunter.
Here.
City of Sand City, Mayor Pendergrass. Here. City of Seaside, Mayor Rubio.
Here.
City of Seaside, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. Here. 20th Congressional District, Alec Arago. 17th State Senate District, Nicole Charles. 29th State Assembly District, Taina Vargas Edmond. Here. University of California, Donna Blitzer. California State University, Eduardo Ochoa. Here. Monterey Peninsula College, Vicky Nakamura. Here. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, PK Diffenbaugh. Monterey Salinas Transit, Lisa Reinheimer. Here. Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Debbie Hale. United States Army, Colonel Fellinger. Fort Ord BRAC Office, Lyle Shurtleff. Here. Marina Coast Water District, Director Moore. Here. Chair Edelin, you have a quorum.
Lena, thank you very much. I'm going to insert an item in the agenda at this time. As most of you know, if you've already heard, we recently lost a member of the FORA family, our senior project manager, Mr. Jim Arnold. He passed away very unexpectedly this last Saturday. I would ask that we honor him by having a moment of silence in his memory. If you're religious, please say a prayer. Thank you. The world is a lesser place without Jim's presence. Okay, Michael, acknowledgements, announcements, and correspondence, please.
Yes, Chair Edelin, members of the board. First, this item is going to come before the board a little bit later, but I want to emphasize the fact that we will have a Fort Ord Trails Symposium that's going to happen on January 22nd. It'll be from 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. It'll be at the University Center at California State University, Monterey Bay, and I want to highlight that for all of you wherever we can, because we are doing this to demonstrate for the folks in this region how trails are a part of the economics and the recovery at Fort Ord, the kind of economic difference and the value that it contributes to properties on the former Fort Ord and in the region. Also, I want to point out that the follow-up to the visit that we had from our consultants doing the regional urban design guidelines will be the design charrette that'll happen February 2nd through 13th. I know many members of the diverse communities in the Monterey area were able to participate to some extent, but we are purposely scheduling items in the evenings and potentially on Saturdays to make sure that we get full and complete participation from all of the folks in the region. And finally, a highlight is this week, the Fort Ord Reuse Authority hosted a visit by the Region 9 Administrator of the United States Economic Development Administration, Mr. Len Smith. He's been working for EDA for about 40 years. For the last 38 years, we've shared a lot in common. We started working together in the 1970s, and while he was here, he brought with him the new economic development representative, Melinda Matson, and we had city manager and executives from the city of Salinas, the city of Seaside, the city of Monterey, city of Sand. We had county representatives. We had representatives from as far north as Watsonville, Santa Cruz, and as far south as Carmel, all participating in this reception and award and description of the economic activities going on in this region. Dave Spar, who's worked with the EDA project, also spoke at that event. At the end of the event, Len Smith pointed out that he was going to advance our request for a business planning grant to allow us to move ahead with the business planning for building removal, especially in surplus 2, but across the base.
Thank you, Michael. I'd just like to add, with regard to this grant, we're looking at about $350,000 grant to FORA, and that originated with a FORA delegation of Washington, D.C. earlier this year, where Mr. Hulamar had accompanied us, and it was obvious to me, and I think most of the members of the FORA team, it was Mr. Hulamar's direct personal relationship, professional relationship with the members in Washington, D.C. that we met that led to that $350,000 grant. Not anybody could have done it, and I'd just like to acknowledge we're lucky to have somebody like Mr. Hulamar as our executive officer, sorry. Okay, next we have the consent agenda of the board meeting minutes for November 12th, November 14th, and the FORA 2015 board meeting schedule. Any member of the board wishing to pull any of these items for corrections, discussions, questions? Okay, let's go out to the public real fast. Any member of the public wishing to pull in these items? Okay, we have Supervisor Potter, and we have Mayor Rubio as a second. Oh, the November 14th board meeting minutes, or those are the revised minutes. Okay, okay, they were sent out. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we go to our business items. A second vote to approve the agreement with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. Mr. Hulamar will explain this.
Sure, Chair Edel and members of the board, the history of this goes back to discussion that occurred last spring with members of the board and members of the public about the need to advance FORA's participation in the economic development activities in the region. We brought that kind of activity to the attention of the Finance Committee with the idea that we would fund a specific position that would do that kind of work. This is also in a follow-up to items we heard from the colloquium and items we heard during the base reuse plan reassessment process in 2012. At the last meeting, the board voted to authorize the executive officer to execute an agreement with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership not to exceed $100,000. This would be the second vote on that item today. There are folks in the public who have asked to comment to the board. I know I see Bud Colligan from the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership in the back, in case there are specific questions related to the second vote.
Any member of the board wishing to make comment on this item at this time? I'm sorry, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that I just don't think it's appropriate to spend $200,000 of the public's money without knowing what's going to be delivered for that money. The contract doesn't have the kind of accountability and accounting measures that I think are required of us. So, thank you.
Any other comments by members of the? Yes, Mayor Gundry.
I think this gives us an opportunity to move forward. FORA has been waddling around for a very long period of time, and this gives us an opportunity to move forward, to do some economic development and make this area grow.
Any other members by board members? I'm sorry, Mayor Rubio.
I just want to make sure that we're approving 100,000, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby.
I think our last meeting, Supervisor Parker made the same comment, so I would ask the executive director to speak to some of those issues. I know he thought about how to tighten this thing up a little bit. I support the motion, but I know he has some type of way of tightening up the agreement.
Mr. Hulamark.
Yes, Chair, members of the board, if you note in your board packet on page 13 of 125, there are some rather specific services that the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership would undertake on behalf of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority. The partnership has also agreed to, on a regular basis, provide reports back to the board on how the investment by the FORA board is contributing to the effort in the region. While it's not a specific dollar for dollar accounting process, these are items that have a rather specific impact on Fort Ord Reuse Authority's efforts and the priorities and workforce needs that we listed through our both base reuse plan and through the reassessment process a couple of years ago. If you look on page 15 of 125, there are also some specifics that what all of the participants will get out of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. They are in direct connection with the Business Council for Monterey County. They actively participate in the reports back to the community, including the status reports that the Business Council does on an annual basis and quarterly. So I think that there are ways of measuring the success, and if it's the desire of this board to bring back in a more detail those kinds of reports, we'd be happy to do that.
Thank you, Michael. Councilmember Hoffa.
My understanding is we advertised a position and had 15 applicants and interviewed 4. One person was offered the job and then declined. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
I guess
the person did decline. Go ahead and go.
To be a little more detailed, we had a significant amount of interest. We wound up with 15 completed applications that included full detailed written reports and other items. So the interest was, and the folks that expressed interest was larger than the 15. We did interview a group. We prioritized 3 that we thought were all eligible to do the job as recommended by the committee. We offered the job to all 3. All 3 turned it down.
Okay. My preference would be to have somebody who works directly for us so that, as Supervisor Parker said, we can hold them more accountable and have more specific deliverables. But I don't know the details of, the folks that you interviewed and so on. But my preference would be to reinitiate that position advertisement for that reason, because I think there's value in having someone who works directly for the organization on something as important as this.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, Councilmember Morton.
Yes, I addressed this at the last meeting as well and would echo the sentiments of Supervisor Parker and our newest member, Mr. Hoffa, Councilmember Hoffa. On that Exhibit A, I do want to point out, this came in front of the Finance Committee initially, and there was a line item suggested budget addition of $25,000, which puts us in the last classification, the minimum amount that gets you all of the benefits. And what I would point out and ask everybody to give consideration to for a donation or a membership of $5,000, this is really hard for old eyes, $5,000, we get all of the benefits, except we don't have our company logo on the banner, that we're not invited to be on the board or have a member on its board. A video profile of our company would not be given to us. And the point is, FORA already has all of these things. FORA has a tremendous presence already on the internet and already in the community that fulfills these additional items that the difference between paying $5,000 and now $100,000 contribution buys. And the item was stricken from the proposed budget because we had the same concerns that Mr. Hoffa has just expressed. We were looking for someone that was, if this was going to be approved, for an expenditure that was working directly for FORA's benefit and not just for the general community. So I would ask my fellow board members to either reduce the amount to the 5,000 to 10,000 or 9,999 contribution because we're going to get the same benefit.
Thank you. I see Ms. Mary Ann Leffel in the audience. Would you like to answer any of the questions that were raised by the members of the board thus far?
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, while she's coming forward, if I could
Yes.
just clarify what was clarified.
If you would, please.
That I spoke of $200,000. Mayor Rubio clarified that it's only $100,000. For 1 year, it's only $100,000, but we're actually approving 2 years of funding, which makes it $200,000 with no accountable
Thank
deliverables.
Ms. Leffel.
So for those of you who know me in a 45-year career in banking, I'm nothing but accountable. I think that's most important, and I certainly understand your concerns. This is not a contract. It's an agreement, a memo of understanding for you to be part of an overall regional effort to work on economic development on a regional basis, which is what I really applaud for us stepping out with a lot of the efforts of Cal State University Monterey Bay on some of these regional forums that have started, some of the discussions that are regional, so that we can find agreements that we can all agree on and we can target the right type of companies to keep here and the right type of companies to bring in here. We know that we need jobs. We know that we need the right kind of growth and development, and this is really the way to work together to get it. When we did focus groups 2 years ago, the key word for this entire region is Monterey. It's not Watsonville, Salinas, Marina, Seaside, it's Monterey. And that is the word that when someone is looking for this area that they may want to do business, that's the word they typically search for. So we spent some time developing a name that we could all agree on. San Benito County said, if you'll let us be part of it because we're left out of everything, we can live with Monterey. So we have Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. It's really a place, Seaside probably has exemplified this, so has Monterey, where they have worked with a company or they've had a request from a company that they would like to come to that particular place. They do not have either the building for it, the water for it, somehow they cannot solve it, so they call our office and then we look out to all of our partners to see if there's an appropriate place for this. And if you will recall back when we did the fight for Monterey Pasta, that was exactly how this worked. We could not keep it in Salinas. They did not have a building within the confines of Salinas. We looked on the coast. There was nothing because of water. We looked in Watsonville. The building was old and could not be rehabbed. They ended up in Gilroy. 240 people kept their jobs. 150 people kept their homes. Their children were not sent somewhere else. And we did not lose Monterey Pasta to Kent, Washington. So it's about a regional effort. It's a way to work together, and it's a way to best use the assets of our region so that we can make our region stronger. So.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions,
and I'd
comments?
like to introduce Bud Colligan, who is here with
Okay.
us.
Bud, stand up. Good.
And I will not speak for him. He's perfectly capable of speaking for himself.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Supervisor Parker, for your remarks. I thought maybe I'd just give you a little history about how this occurred. Michael asked me, I've been involved in economic development in the region for the last few years. I've met some of you in doing so. And Michael asked me several months ago to be part of the interview committee for the economic development specialist. I agreed and was part of the interview process, and when the candidates decided not to go forward, I said to Michael, I think, we're all trying to do the same thing. In fact, I had some reservations about an economic development specialist for FORA in particular, because I felt like FORA is part of a greater region here, as Marianne just said. And back in February, when we had the Monterey County critical conversations here, and Mary Ann started talking about the website for the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. I'm from Santa Cruz County. I said, Mary Ann, we need to make this a regional effort, and I've been working with her to make it a regional effort over the last year. So when the interview process did not work out, I said, Michael, you know, one of the best things we could do is, instead of trying to just develop something at FORA, which is a piece of the region, we should really try to develop the entire region, and FORA obviously is a part of that. And as Michael pointed out, Section 4A and B of this agreement really speaks to both the general and specific things that we would do from an economic development standpoint. And to try to incent that activity, I said that I would match the FORA contribution of $100,000 in order to be able to contribute to getting the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership off the ground. We are putting together a board. We are launching MBEP at the January 29th economic forecast early next year. So I see this as a fantastic opportunity for FORA to really amplify its efforts, not be more narrow and specific and vertical just on the needs of FORA, but to see how FORA fits into the entire region of economic development. So I would request that you consider that as you're thinking about this issue, because my contribution is dependent on the FORA contribution, and I certainly would be very pleased to include FORA in what we're doing and have it be you know, an active regional member of MBEP.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments by members of the board? Yes, Councilmember Morton.
Yes, so who, if any, members now are at the $100,000 level or the chairman level, which is $25,000 or more? Are there any members?
We, again, we're just starting MBEP. We have about 10 cities and counties who are already members of MBEP. There are about 5 or so regional agencies and corporations, and of course both the County of Monterey and the County of Santa Cruz. I don't have the specific membership levels. Obviously, my contribution would be at that level, but the contribution of FORA at that level was not to speak specifically to this list of benefits, but was more to develop this memorandum of understanding that Michael had drafted to have both specific benefits for FORA as well as greater help in developing the regional economic scene.
Thank you.
Any other questions by?
I'd like to make a
Yes,
motion.
Mayor Gunter. Well,
Unless you have a question.
well, no,
She
we
has
have
a
to go out to the public first. You have a question, Councilmember Lucius?
Thank you. I just think there is a bit of a discrepancy in our recommendation. The board recommend, or the staff recommendation is the not to exceed $100,000. But in the MOU itself, it does call for another 1-year extension. So I wonder for some of our board members who are voicing concerns, if a compromise might be to approve the MOU for 1 year, and then we revisit it after a year. We hear about all the great things that are happening in this partnership, and then at that time make the decision to extend it for a second year. Thank you.
Yeah. That would be up to the board, but we would have to come back to the board next year for another $100,000 vote. And we could ask for the performance evaluation at that time and see how well they've done. It's a possibility. Other questions, comments by members of the board? Let's go out to the public. Excuse me. Jet lag. Let's go out to the public and find out any questions or comments by members of the public. Yes, ma'am.
Levon Stone, Director of the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. I hear comments like people are being left out. Well, we are the oldest nonprofit organization in this entire county that has worked on and with this process concerning Fort Ord, and we are still being left out. It's indicative of what is happening around this country. And what I see is that the African American community, which of course has been greatly diminished in this process, and we're representing that community and other low-income communities. We were not invited to participate with the economic development process. We have been talking about it all these years. We have been talking about what's wrong. We know our community. We know the stress patterns. We know what is needed here. But instead of having us in the inner circle, we're still in the outer circle. I wrote a letter concerning this process of more contractors and another colloquium process, which is probably the 5th or 6th. I don't know how many we've been through. We've been hoping and we've been waiting and we've been praying that we will all work together, but that is not the case. I don't know what else to do here. I don't know where that letter is, but we sent it to a number of people and groups, and also to the Economic Development Department. And we are still waiting for something to happen, something positive happen, something positive to happen in our community. When we look at parks, like in the city of Seaside, the black community should be saying what we want this park to look like. Not just for hiking and biking and all of that, but what do we want our community to look like so people can feel comfortable with picnics and those kinds of things. Not that we don't want it fixed, but let us make those decisions. Let us make those decisions. I mean, you know, to just roll over people and say, we're going to do this for you because we feel like this is best for you. That's not right. That's not including. That is keeping people out.
Your time is up, ma'am.
So I'm asking you, again, to include us in our communities and in this county. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next public speaker, please.
I just have one question. If an individual was hired, would his salary and benefits be in excess of $100,000?
Okay, next public speaker. Going once, going twice. Okay, public comment period is closed. We'll come back to our executive officer. Would you like to answer the question?
In the notes that I took, Ms. Stone indicated about being included in the process, and I did meet with her last week, and I intend to meet with her again this week to specifically talk about the issues that we are confronting on the economic development activities and how to specifically incorporate those into the African American, Latino, and other diverse communities in the region. And I know the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership has indicated its interest in doing exactly the same. Part of what we're doing with this building removal program is working on ways to use apprenticeship programs and training. We were also contacted by the folks getting ready to build the Bureau of Land Management office across the street about apprenticeship training programs and identifying local folks for both the economic development opportunities and employment. And I hope to work with Ms. Stone to get their involvement in those two processes. I believe though that was the major question that was major point that was raised. And the last question, the answer to Tom Mancini's question is yes.
Okay, we're back to the board right now. I believe we have a motion from Mayor Gunter.
Yes, I make a motion that we approve $100,000 and revisit it next year to determine what we've done and if we are investing our money wisely.
And we have a second from Mayor Rubio. Okay, discussion on the motion? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby.
To be clear, that's the MOU we have right here, the agreement we have right here.
Yes.
Okay, just.
Right.
Well, I understand it says 2 years, we come back, but I want to make sure that,
We're talking about
it's
1
not
year.
separate,
Right, 1 year.
you know.
We'll come back with a performance discussion at the end of the year and whether we want to extend it or not. Any other discussion on the motion? Yes, President Ochoa.
As an ex officio member, I won't be voting on this motion, but I thought I would just state for the record that I support this motion. I have confidence in the abilities of the individuals involved to help forward the economic development agenda for the region.
Thank you. Any other comments on or discussion on the motion? Yes.
So one of my questions was going to be, could Eduardo tell me his opinion? So thank you, Eduardo.
Great minds think alike. Is that how it goes?
And I also wanted to just say, I think some of us might be more comfortable just acknowledging that this is a major shift from the initial, because of the story that Michael told in response to your question of the sort of falling through of multiple attempts at an economic development director, that this is a different direction. It is the support of a local nonprofit. It is a support at above the maximum level as an investment in a particular organization. And I also appreciate Casey Lucius's addition. So with the clarity that we're not doing what we said we would do, but we're doing something different with the resources, I'm happy to support the motion. And I'm happy to check in and see how it's going. Thanks.
I'm happy you're happy also. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Beach,
Yes.
Chair Edelin,
Aye.
Mayor Gunter,
Aye.
Councilmember Lucius, Councilmember Morton, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby, Supervisor Parker, Mayor Pendergrass, Supervisor Potter, Mayor Rubio, Councilmember Hoffa.
No.
The motion passes.
Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, next on the agenda is the Post-Reassessment Advisory Committee report. I would like to say the committee's been working very hard. We're meeting about every 2 weeks for an hour and a half. We just had a meeting right before this meeting, so we're having meetings upon meetings upon meetings, and actually the meetings are being very productive. Josh Metz deserves a lot of credit for being the FORA point of contact and FORA head and moving this committee forward. So he'll be briefing us on the project right now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and members of the board. What I'm going to focus on here is the work that's been the focus of the Post-Reassessment Advisory Committee for the last series of meetings, which is planning for the Fort Ord Trail Symposium. This is going to happen, as Michael mentioned, Thursday, January 22nd up at CSUMB, and will focus on the issue of, see if this is trails in the region. And we're happy to have a nice, there we go, a regional effort, and with a broad and yet focused set of topics, including economics, regional coordination, and design. We have a well-developed schedule that will allow time for hearing from experts that we have coming in from around the country to inform us about best practices from really around the country and around the world, as well as opportunities for interaction amongst our local officials and community members. We wanted to point out that we have this opportunity for local officials from each of our communities to host tables prior to lunch and engage community members and others about trail planning and coordination efforts in their local jurisdictions. This is a list here of some of our the schedule and some of our speakers to highlight. We have Tim Blumenthal from an organization called People for Bikes. They're an international bicycle advocacy group with over 1 million members. We have Dina Belzer, an economist, a member of our regional urban design guideline team. Our keynote speaker will be Mia Burke. She's the president of Alta Planning and Design, one of the most influential planning and design firms related to active transportation. Laura Thompson from the San Francisco Bay Trail. John Wentworth, who is the executive director of the Mammoth Lakes Trail and Public Access program. They have a very well-developed rural and urban trail network up there at Mammoth Lakes. If anyone gets up there to recreate, you'd be familiar with that. And Peter Katz, who you would be familiar with from the colloquium, also an international mobility consultant and another member of the Alta Planning and Design team. So it's going to be a very well-informed day, and we hope you can all make it, and your staff. This is the projected budget. We've done everything we can to minimize the costs and show them here. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Josh, you, at the meeting we had earlier today, I had to leave early, but you're talking about possible addition for printing. Is that gone now?
Well, this was not included in the item that we included in the board packet, but indeed there was if you all recall, at the colloquium in December of 2013, we had a really nice little program, and the idea of replicating that program for this event was brought forward, and where we would expect, it's possible we can make it all work with the budget that we have here, where we get to get a specific quote back on what that would take, but we wouldn't expect it to be more than about $2,000 in addition to what's here. But yet, like I said, yet to be seen on the final numbers if we could make it work with this budget.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any questions by members of the board with regard to the PRAC committee and their proposal? Seeing none, out to the public. Any questions by members of the PRAC or members of the public? Got PRAC on the brain. Okay, seeing as none, public comment period's closed. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd move the budget with an added $2,000 to it, so $27,000, not to exceed $27,000.
Second. Thank you very much. We have a motion by Supervisor Parker and a second by Mayor Gunter. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Good, again, Josh, good work. You're bringing that committee for, and I appreciate the work on all the PRAC committee members. They're putting a lot of hours in. Thanks. Okay, next we have accept the discussion and acceptance possible of the fiscal year 13-14 annual financial report. Yes, and Mr. Michael Hulamard will explain this.
Yes, Chair Edel and members of the board, each of you have in your board packet a report that is moved forward regarding the annual financial report. There is a rather detailed report that's been provided to all the members of the board and to members of the public. Our auditor provided an unmodified opinion of FORA's operations. There was for a series of reasons associated with getting all the documentation ready and specifically about the valuation as it is recorded for the Preston Park project. The financial report for Preston Park comes in modified for those two reasons. The Finance Committee reviewed all of these items, received clarification from the auditor, and is recommending that the board accept the Moss, Levy, and Hartsheim certified CPA Fort Ord Reuse Authority fiscal year 13-14 annual financial report. I also want to add that all of this report includes a number of comments that have to be done in order to comply with special federal guidelines under GASB, and each of those change every year. And so there are a couple of adjustments that were made to accommodate some changes that occurred last year in June and July, and so there'll be one or two things might be different. But if there are any questions of the board, I'm here to answer those questions, and I want to thank Ivana Bednarek for her and Marcella Friedrich's excellent work in working with the accountants to make sure they had everything they needed to complete the financial report.
Any questions, comments by members of the board?
Yes,
Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell.
Yes, just one. On the statement, financial statement, page 17, which is 41 of 125 pages of the staff report, it says on the Preston Park that the operating revenue, the rental income net, I assume that's for the year, is $5,661,940.
Yes.
That is that accurate? I'm kind of thinking that's high, but I have no objection to it being that level, but.
If that's correct.
Then
I understand your question.
the net portion,
The net, it's not the revenue minus expenses, it's the net revenue minus maybe bounced checks or something, it's a net revenue. You get your rental deposits. I have people from Alliance, but then you get maybe some return check, canceled checks, so it comes back. So this is net revenue only.
The way it was described, it's really an adjusted gross.
Yeah, adjusted gross.
okay, good. Or bad, whatever. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments by members of the board? Saying, yes, Councilmember Hoffa.
Sorry. On page 19, the report says that the initial value of Preston Park land and buildings was never recorded in these reports. I'm just wondering why that was.
When Preston Park was initially transferred to the Fort Ord Reuse Authority, it had a different kind of valuation, and there was no formal appraisal done of the property at the time of transfer. It was anticipated that Preston Park would be in FORA's ownership for a limited period of time and then be transferred to the city of Marina under some form of transfer. For that reason, it never was recorded, because each and every year there was a process set forward about the potential transfer. It did not ever get transferred, and then the accountant 2 years ago registered this note, and so that's carried forward for the last couple of years.
Other questions, comments? Saying none, let's go out to the public. Any questions or comments by members of the public? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have questions. I don't see the budget on page 19, if that's the page where the budget was supposed to be. And two, being one of the original occupants or residents of Preston Park, I wonder why we had to pay $50 a month every month for water in addition to our rental fees, because we were told that we would be responsible for the new growth on Fort Ord. That's why we had to pay so much water fees. And we paid that fee, $50 a month, to the rental office starting out. We were told that somewhere along the line we were supposed to be reimbursed. We have never received any kind of reimbursement. And when I moved out of Preston Park, I was owed my deposit and an additional $800 that was tacked onto it that I have never received, that a lot of other people that was in Preston Park had never received. That was supposed to be the low-income, affordable rental units, especially to family members of our military, which we are a veteran family. And I'm bringing this up because these things have never been addressed, and they need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comments with regard to this item?
Good afternoon, Denise Turley. Okay, this is actually good news. So I'm looking at page 49, which is the statement from the auditor, potential problems maybe that they found. I would just comment that on this particular item,
I still think you're potentially lacking information in the form of instructions. Maybe this auditor could give them directly to the folks that do the Preston Park budget, because year after year, time after time, even though we didn't get the chance to discuss this last one, it just kind of slid under the door. There still seems to be problems and, you know, no resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment with regard to this item? Seeing none, public comment period closed. Mr. Wilmard.
Yes, Chair Edel and members of the board, Ms. Stone spoke about some items that occurred at the early part of the last decade that were under a prior management company. Many of those were directly related to Marina Coast Water District charges that were associated with capital improvements on the former Fort Ord. As the board may recall, that's an item where Marina Coast Water District charges for Ord community as a single cost center versus those properties off of the former Fort Ord, and it had been the policy both the Marina Coast Water District and the FORA board to charge a small amount to the individual tenants in Preston Park as well as every other tenant on the former Fort Ord, a capital charge that would pay for the improvements, the requirements of upgrading the system, repairing the system on the former Fort Ord as separate from Marina Coast Water District's work off of the former Fort Ord. And so that's what she was speaking about in that regard. I'm not aware of the specifics about the refunds for folks that are moving out of Preston Park, and so I cannot speak to that issue. With respect to the comment made by Denise Turley, with respect to the financial statement, and on page 49, actually page 75 of 125, I believe, there is a statement there, a finding made by our accountants that talked about during some items that were noted during the audit that they asked to have corrected with the effect and the recommendation, and we are working directly with our alliance partners to make sure to take those actions.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion at this time. Okay, Supervisor Potter, motion to receive, and who is the second? Mayor Rubio. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next item we have is the approved resolution requesting Preston Park loan extension. Michael?
Yes, Chair Edel and members of the board, if it's okay with all of the members of the board, I want to speak about the next three items together because they are directly related. The first item has to do with approving a resolution requesting that we extend the loan for Preston Park. It is currently set to expire on Monday and would be in default if it isn't extended on Monday. The resolution that you have in your packet has a slight adjustment to it as a consequence of communication between FORA Council and City of Marina's Council, and all three of these items are related to the reports you have heard about Fort Ord Reuse Authority, City of Marina moving toward an executed settlement agreement for the conveyance of FORA's interest in Preston Park to the city. So this first item, if you look on page 77 of 125, there is a sheet that we've passed out that the public also has, and members of the board have, that adjusts item 1F. There's a simple cross out of the last couple of items and says that that item will be handled according to the terms of a settlement agreement. Item number 8E is related because our agreement for management of the Preston Park project by Alliance Communities, Inc. also expires this month, and along with the extension of the loan, we would need to have a management company to continue in the management of the Preston Park project. And so therefore that has been proposed for your consideration and therefore related to item 8E, or I'm sorry, 8D. So item 8F is authorizing a Preston Park budget amendment. The board has yet to approve the Preston Park budget for this year. We're working with last year's budget, In order to complete work that would be required of a transfer of property from FORA to Marina or FORA to anyone, we would have to complete a substitution of low-flow approved facilities, water conservation facilities, on the in the Preston Park project. And therefore, in order to do that, we would have to amend the budget so that budget would be available in the category for capital improvements to make this occur. So there's essentially 3 items here that are related, and I wanted to to explain to the board that they are tied to one another in the event that you have questions about one, they may flat go one way or the other.
If there's no difficulty among board members about discussing these 3 together, let's go ahead and do that. If somebody has a real pain with one of the 3 and not the others, we can separate them. There's no problem there. Any questions or comments with regard to these 3? Yes, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question about why we were contemplating a 1-year renewal of the management agreement with Alliance since the transfer is slated to take place in the near term. Why not 6 months, for instance?
Well, first of all, that contract is assignable to any new owner. With the current estimate is that we're going to be extending the loan for 6 months. It's not clear how much time is going to be required for all of the transactions to take place. So 1 year, a new owner can make a decision because there's already provisions in that contract. If the new owner has a problem, there's a notice period already included in the contract for termination. So rather than bring it back to you in 6 months for another extension, we felt it made sense for 1 year.
So
Supervisor.
Yeah, you're saying that the all of the details of the transaction may not be completed as quickly as, you know, some other parts. So, all right, great. Thank you for the explanation.
Any other questions, comments by board members? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell.
Thank you. Yes, as to 8F, in the previous item that we just talked about on 8B relating to the, 8C, there was reference to the reserve account for capital improvements having approximately $3.5 million. I'm just wondering, can anyone explain to me what portion of that is presently committed to projects at Preston Park?
Yes.
So in the extra attachments that you should have, and they should be looking like spreadsheets like this that were posted on the FORA website, you should be able to see that there's a column. Oh, I'm sorry. Corey Williams from Alliance Residential. You should be able to see a column that says that there's committed projects. Some of these committed projects have already taken place. Some of those committed projects are in the process of being paid for, and some of those committed projects are intended to take place in the future. The $3 million number that was presented includes payments that have already been completely satisfied, such as the $74,600 for the property assessment that has taken place. A large portion of the $1,827,297 for the roof replacements. It encompasses all of the $13,000 for fire extinguishers, all of the $50,000 for the termite remediation. It does not include the $1.24 million for the window replacement. It does not include the $200,000 for door replacement, and it does not include a portion of all of the items that are listed under the category of 1425 for interior renovations.
So to go back to my question, I'm just wondering, do you have a specific amount of the $3.4 million that's referenced in the previous agenda item is presently committed to existing projects or committed to projects that have been approved but haven't been started yet?
I do not have an actual total of that number. I do not know exactly what amount is outstanding from the roof replacement. I believe that there's one payment that's left to be made to the vendor, but I do not know how much that is.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other questions by members of the board? Oh, I'm sorry. Director Moore.
Thank you, Chair.
The eyes go a week after you're 21. You know.
Oh, I certainly know that.
I do too.
So I just wanted to comment, this issue was brought to my attention about a week and a half ago. The big ticket item on 8F with respect to water conservation compliance, of course, is the commodes. And I'm told that there are about 671 in Preston Park that have not yet been retrofitted. They have apparently been doing some retrofitting prior to this. So we have a program. If they were to retrofit with 1.28 gallon per flush commodes, we have a subsidy. That's the good news. It's about $125 per commode. Bad news is I've been told that our current budget line item for that is empty or near empty. So something would have to be brought to the Board of Directors to refill that budget line item should the choice be made by the owners, FORA, to put in 1.28 gallon per flush commodes. Certainly from a water conservation perspective, we'd encourage that. The ordinance only requires a 1.6, but if you do a 1.6, you'll pay the entire freight. So I'd certainly urge you to decide what you want to do and bring an appropriate request before the Board of Directors of Marina Coast Water District. The other thing is that this ordinance was originally written mostly with an eye to single-family homes or small apartment buildings. It wasn't exactly written to accommodate the immediate change out of 671 commodes. You can change 3 or 4 commodes in a single-family home overnight. I don't think you can do that with 671 commodes. So if some additional time is needed, I would also urge you to bring such a request to the Board of Directors of Marina Coast Water District. Can't predict how they vote, but they might be cooperative in that regard. I certainly think they'd be reasonable.
Yeah, Tom, we'll bring it before the executive committee for discussion, and probably bring it back before the board. You make a lot of sense, at least in my opinion. Any other questions, comments? Okay, let's go out to the public for public comment with regard to this item. Any public comment? These 3 items, I'm sorry.
Yes. Do you all know that the toilet was invented by a black man? I just want to get that in. You're welcome. I'm quite sure you didn't know that. That's an educational piece.
That's good.
I just would like to know from 1994 until today, if I can get or find how much federal dollars have come into this community from 1994 until today. I'm really curious about that. I would just like to know where to find it, where to get it, or who to talk to get those figures. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment speaker, please.
Clarify, because I was busy writing. This is the one time for public comment on all 3 of these items, correct?
Yes, you can speak on all 3.
Thank you.
If you need 3 minutes per, you may have 3 minutes per.
No. Then also clarify that we have not yet battled over the budget for Preston Park. That's still looking at us in the future. Specifically to the extension of the management company, understand why you have to do that. Of course, we just want to say for the record that we have the same concerns that we've had this year and every other year. Specifically, when Alres shows up to the house, they need to have a work order in their hand so that their technician knows why they're supposed to be there. They should not be knocking at the door asking the resident, why did you call? They should already know. Number 1. Number 2, I would like to suggest that MAC meetings, Management Advisory Committee meetings, recommence. I just want to have conversation on that subject. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next public speaker, please. Any other public speakers in this issue? Any of these three issues? Okay, saying none, then the public comment period's closed. I'm bringing it back to the board. We'll need 3 separate motions on this. Entertain a motion. Okay, if we have Mayor Rubio will be the motion maker. Mayor Gunter will be the second for the first, which is 8D, the approved resolution, the modified resolution requesting the Preston Park loan extension. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Very good. Next, we have 8E, the approve the 1-year renewal of Preston Park Management Agreement with Alliance Communities Incorporated. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Who said that?
I did.
Oh, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby, I'm sorry.
Then I'll speak on a second.
I've got a crink in my neck. I'm only looking one direction. And who's the second? Okay, and Councilmember Lucius. Any discussion on the motion?
I'll be quick, Chair. I just want to add in, at the Finance Committee, the Finance Committee did have issues with the audit report saying that Alliance had issues with some of the discrepancies within the audit itself.
Okay.
But I've always been a strong supporter of the Attendance Association. But what we didn't want to do at the Finance Committee was to throw something in the gears when we're trying to settle with Marina and go forward.
Right.
So I take this time to tell the Tenant Association, when this thing is sold to whoever, they need to start speaking to the new owner, because what they're talking about is very important. So hopefully within the next couple of days, they'll be speaking to the Marina City Council. So just want to throw that. I want them to know that their problems are, we're listening to them, but the appropriate people will be more responsive. The new owners will be more responsive.
Thank you very much for your comments, sir. Ian, I'm sure Gail appreciates handing off the baton to her, and also Frank. Okay, let's see, do we have that's the discussion, the motion. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion, oh, we have 2 noes. Okay, Councilmember Morton and Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell. And that's good.
In that case, Mr. Chair, I'll
Yes.
support the city. It's going to be their property, so.
Okay,
yeah.
we have 3 nays. Everybody else is,
On the question, then, that means it's coming back?
it has to come back.
Okay, so just on the question, that means when it comes back for second, we should just vote straight on the second with no adjustments, no ambiguity, like the second
Well,
vote.
that'll be the vote, but
Well,
again,
let's-
we'll have to have a special meeting to come back to have this thing done with regard to our transfer of this property to Marina. So we will have a special meeting on this. Everybody realizes.
Well, can the board know what their objections are so we can know what we need to work on?
Yeah, would you, Councilmember Morton, would you like to?
My basic objection is that several years ago, the 3-party management agreement with Marina was changed to a 2-party agreement, and as a result, the city of Marina has had no say whatsoever as to the application of funds that were put into reserve or referencing the budget at all. It was just the case of the 2 members on this board instead of it going through the city council and Marina as it had been going on for years and years and years.
Yeah, I would just add to that is the extension of 1 year doesn't give any authority then for the city of Marina within 1 year to do something should it elect to do so, further taking away the authority of our council to act independently with our own judgment.
Yes, Councilmember Beach.
I'm kind of confused now because I would have liked to hear this discussion before the vote, because I don't know that the board, as a member of the board, I'm fairly agnostic on whether we amend the contract with the management group to provide month-to-month, escape clauses or whatever else helps. Is a technical matter. This is a technical matter of working in the flexibility so that if and when Marina takes ownership, they can do what they want. This is no intention on my part or on the board's part, I would imagine, to tie the hands of the new owner. So my question is, on a procedural matter, can we, right this moment, amend the contract with the management group to have a contingency clause that when the ownership transfer takes place, that this agreement has an escape clause at that moment for them to switch horses at that point?
can the Marina delegation put forth a motion that would be acceptable to the rest of the board with regard to this contract, so we don't have to come back again?
I can't. I can't because of the way in which it was determined that it was going to be a two-party management agreement, and disregarding the interest that has been acknowledged that the city has in Preston Park. And for several years, we have been denied the right to determine what exactly was going on with Preston. And this continues.
Okay, yes, Councilmember Lucius.
I would just ask our members of the board who are representing Marina to refer to the management agreement, because there is an early termination clause.
Right.
So the agreement doesn't have to be for 1 year. It can be terminated with a 30-day notice. So once Marina takes ownership of Preston Parks, they can proceed to terminate this contract if that's what they wish. So I'm not sure, you know, if you're representing, I understand you're representing Marina, but I think we also have to, in this body, represent the interest of FORA. And as we're making this transition, it would be important to maintain the consistency for the tenants with Alliance so that there's not a disruption during this time of transition.
Okay, I ask again for one last, go ahead, Mayor Rubio.
Yeah, I think the Marina representatives have expressed their dissatisfaction. They're going to vote no. Then we just go ahead and have our vote, and if we have to have a special meeting, we'll have a special meeting.
Okay, we've already had the vote. I asked one last time, I guess, with our Marina brethren and sisters, is there anything you could put forth that you think might be approved by the entire board? Frank? No?
If this board wants to make Marina part of the management agreement,
I'm sorry? So what would your motion be specifically?
the amendment as to the management agreement that presently exists between FORA and Alliance to be amended to set forth the fact that the City of Marina is also a party to that management agreement.
You have any problem with that? I don't have
To the board.
Yes, Mayor Rubio.
Yeah, with all due respect, I mean, I'm sympathetic to what Director O'Connell is asking for, but I think that's a huge legal question that we really shouldn't do on the fly. I mean, that may be something we bring back and discuss at the special meeting as we go through this, but on the fly, that's just a lot of liability or something. I couldn't be comfortable with that.
That was my question to our executive officer and legal counsel just now. Okay, it looks like we've hit an impasse. Anybody else may? Yes, Mayor.
Just last. The point is, if this goes to the second vote, we have a special meeting, there's no need to adjust the agreement or vote. So if Marina is not capable of doing it now, then we're just going to move forward. And whoever buys the property can jump out in 30 days. So that's, I mean, I think Casey, Director Luce made a perfect point. And I would have liked to have heard some of these objections before we voted, because maybe we could have made some changes beforehand. But if we're going to have a special meeting, it's too late to, again, adjust the motion.
Right. I guess we're not going to have a kumbaya moment here during this meeting. Okay, the second vote fails. Let's go on to 8F. Authorize a Preston Park budget amendment for compliance work. This is the first vote. Okay. Yeah, okay, so we have a motion. Is that the motion from Mayor Rubio? Yes, and a second vote, I mean, a second from, okay, Supervisor Potter. Any discussion on the motion? Saying none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay. So is there anything that we can do, or is there a motion you can put forth where you would accept the budget? No from one, no from the other.
So we have what we're trying to do here, what we were trying to do, just some of us here, to try to get, was to avoid, to get an acceptable consensual
agreement on both things, so we wouldn't have to meet in a special meeting now. Am I understanding that we cannot take the second vote until, we can't have it at the next regular meeting? We have to somehow do it before then? Is that why?
This is the first vote. We're gonna
No,
have to
I
bring it.
know,
Yeah.
but now that we know it's not unanimous
Right.
already, do we now have to go, why does the term special meeting keep coming up? Can we not just do this at the next regular meeting?
I'm not sure of the timeline right now with regard to the closure of the sale of Preston Park. I just want to make sure that we have all the loose ends tied up so the sale goes through to help Marina out. Marina wants it, we want to sell it, and I personally am not aware of some of the little worms that are floating around down there that might influence the lender or our ability to complete this negotiation. That's just the way I look at it. John, you wanted to make a comment?
The only thing as to timing, it can be brought up at the next regularly scheduled meeting if it becomes necessary in the interim to try to get this agreement done. This kind of a vote will just, it makes it more difficult, and we're going to have a special meeting.
Okay.
That's all.
I just want to comment. This seems like a lost opportunity. I regret that this has not just been, that's why we meet. We could have banged this out, had two things that required no extra meeting, and were preferable to the city of Marina. What's going to happen now is something that's not preferable to the city of the Marina will be passed on a second vote, either a regular meeting or a special meeting. I find that regrettable, but I just am voicing that procedural issue.
Okay, we
Chair?
have, yes.
I have a
Yes,
question.
Mayor Gunter.
On the compliance work, that's work that has to be done prior to the sale. Is that my understanding?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, this is the first vote. Lena, you have the yeas and ayes and nays. I'm sorry. Yes, Councilmember Lucius.
I wonder if our legal counsel could just advise us a little bit. I just last week went through our AB 1234 training, and part of that training includes conflict of interest, when to abstain from a vote, when to recuse yourself, etc. And it seems to me that these two votes, the last one and this vote, both appear to coincide with the sale of Preston Parks and interfere with the sale of Preston Parks. And it also appears that there may be a conflict of interest. And so I wonder if you could advise our board members if it's even appropriate for the Marina representatives to be voting on these issues.
John.
Just by way of history, it was the Marina representatives that actually proposed the initial loan on this project way back. So they've been voting, all the way back into the 2010 arena. I represent the board. I do not represent these specific representatives, so I'm not going to give them any specific legal advice. It's my opinion that they do not have a legal conflict here that would require them to recuse themselves.
Okay, yes, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby.
I thought it was a good question. But really what I want to get to is back what Director Gunther talked about, the compliance work. How can we sell this to anybody if we're not prepared to get the compliance work done? And so I think this puts a wrench in the gears, possibly, I don't know. But we need to explain to the public of how this slows FORA down from negotiating with anybody, let alone Marina. So could you explain if there's anything in there?
It certainly does slow down the process, but there are means and measures that the board can take to accelerate the vote and move this along, even though Marina has voted against the measures.
No, I understand. I just want the public to understand Marina is slowing this down and possibly putting it in jeopardy because we can't sell it to anyone until this compliance work is done. Is that correct?
These are projects. First, the management of the property is certainly positive for the project or for the complex, and the retrofitting will benefit the project and the community. So that's kind of speaks for itself.
Okay, we've had the three votes. We know where we stand. Any last minute comments before we move on? Okay, we're moving on. Let's go down to 8G. Approve the corrective amendment to the executive officer contract. Michael? I'm sorry, John, our attorney counsel.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Edelin and members of the board. You will recall that the executive officer contract was consolidated last December and was voted upon in July. The consolidation was necessary to clarify the terms of the existing contract, and it incorporated a variety of different amendments and FORA policies that had evolved during the course of Mr. Hulamard's employment. Some of the modifications of those terms had different effects on Mr. Hulamard's compensation. In one instance, there was an adjustment to his benefits that moved his salary, or decreased his salary, or his overall benefit package. In October, the board voted in favor of an 8% increase in the executive officer compensation as recommended by the executive committee. The recommendation of the executive committee and the vote assumed that the contract provided for merit adjustments, just as the previous contract had. We got to the November meeting, and I asked the board at that time to approve a corrective amendment to include language allowing the merit increase, because the new contract did not provide for that merit increase. At the last board meeting, there was no action taken, and the board, though, asked the executive committee to review and recommend to the board how the matter should be resolved. The executive committee met on December the 3rd and recommended to the board to simply approve a corrective amendment to the executive officer contract, which basically just takes the language from his previous contract and inserts it into the new one, which allows for a merit increase. And that's all that is really before the board today.
I'd just like to reemphasize that all we're talking about now is correcting Michael's contract. It has nothing to do with any merit increases. Also, I'm going to bring before the executive committee at our next meeting to start this, and for full disclosure and transparency, instead of taking a second vote based on a motion that was based on a contract that it wasn't complete or it was inaccurate. Now, if we decide to approve this contract today, we'll start with a first vote if the executive committee agrees the next time, so we're starting from scratch. There's not going to be any gray areas in there, so again, we'll be fully transparent on that. Any discussion or questions with regard to this item this far from the board? Okay, yes, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you. You know, this, the wording has gotten kind of convoluted. Merit increase as an incentive for future performance. You know, the standard way that these kinds of issues are dealt with is to have a shorter term contract at the end of which term, or the beginning of the next term, there is consideration for a raise, not for that consideration for a raise, whatever you want to call it, to happen on an annual basis. It's just not normal. We seem to be talking as if the executive officer hasn't received any raises. He's been getting cost of living increases just as other staff do. He has been getting, he gets a longevity increase when those get given to the rest of the staff. The only other kinds of increases that the other staff get that the executive officer now doesn't get are step increases. Usually those stop happening after about 7 to 10 years of time in the job, because the thought is that the learning curve to do the job has pretty well run its course, and they know what they're doing, and they've gotten there. So so I think in the case of Mr. Hulamard, he definitely has learned how to do the job. He's at the top step, still getting those COLAs and longevity, and essentially it looks to me as though this contract is just trying to add some more step increases in a way that I just don't think is appropriate. I also think that, you know, the implication that somehow he's so special, he's special. We have a lot of special employees at FORA who work hard and who do good work. Are we now going to consider that when they reach their top step that we're going to have to rethink and figure out some way to get them extra increases. I just think it's, this just isn't an appropriate way to express our appreciation for the job that our executive director does. I think there are other ways to do it, and coming up with convoluted language in inappropriately long-term contracts is not it.
Mayor Rubio.
The idea of inappropriate contract, I'm not really familiar with. I've worked with contracts throughout my entire career, and a contract is whatever term that the negotiating parties come up with. That's what's appropriate. And in terms of this language, when you're doing a contract negotiation, you include what's negotiated. You don't just arbitrarily take things out. And that's what was done. This contract does not reflect the true condition of the negotiation of that contract. So this is a correction to that process. It was inappropriately taken out, and it should have been in, and that's all we're doing. The previous contract was a short-term contract. It had this language in it, and it's just putting it back in where it's supposed to be. It's not renegotiating the contract. It's putting it where it's supposed to be. It's a corrective action. There was an error made, and it's just putting it back in. And as far as the term, this board agreed to the term, so that makes it appropriate. Thank you.
Any other comment by board members? Seeing none, let's go out to the public. Any public comment with regard to this item? Seeing none, come back to the board. I would entertain a motion. Supervisor Potter made the motion, and second by Mayor Rubio. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, we have Supervisor Parker, Councilmember Morton, and Councilmember Hoffa as nays. Okay? Okay, thank you very much. Next, we have the public comment period. Any member of the public may address the board on any item not on the agenda. You've got 3 minutes. Any members of the public wishing to address the item, address the board? Seeing none, public comment period is closed. Next, we go to the executive officer's report. Michael?
Yeah, so Chair Edelin, members of the board, I have a number of items that are information items that I think the board members have had the opportunity to review in detail, and I think they're fully comfortable with those. I want to highlight just one of those under executive officer's report, and that would be the travel report. And I want to use this opportunity to discuss for the board some of the benefits that I think were achieved in the attendance to the November Association of Defense Communities Redevelopment Forum. And I very much want to encourage the board members to look at the Association of Defense Communities website when they have an opportunity. There's a great deal on that website that has an offer for communities that are looking at recovery programs and economic development programs for former military bases. And I know that Councilmember Hoffa is very much aware of this with the City of Monterey. I work very closely with Dino Pick and their city manager on issues related to base closure. We have a number of them that we're facing across the country. But in particular, I wanted to talk about the kind of opportunities that the jurisdictions here in the Monterey Bay region may be able to use crowdfunding and crowdsourcing mechanisms for generating redevelopment activities and other work that they do. The city of San Francisco has a 4% unemployment rate, which is virtually no unemployment. They've done that through the attraction of folks like Google and other kinds of companies that have come to their city and are hiring locally, that look at the local community interests and provide that on a regular basis. There are a number of breakout sessions. I provided a report in your board packet, and I asked if you have any questions about any of those breakout sessions that occurred. Please take an opportunity to give me a call. I also want to highlight that I went on a tour of the Presidio of San Francisco, and I know that Councilmember Morton in particular knows about the Presidio and the kind of work that's been done there to link economic development activities, housing, commercial activities, film, and other kinds of activities together with an interactive network of recreation and trails that takes advantage of the open space areas that are on the Presidio of San Francisco. We have that kind of opportunity here at Fort Ord. And I think that it was another opportunity, and it might be useful for if board members have would like to do something like that. I think we could do something from a FORA perspective as part of our next steps in implementing our program to talk about how the jobs directly get produced in that kind of environment. So those are a couple of things that I'd like to highlight, not take the rest of your afternoon up with it, but wanted to point those out.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Do we have any items from members of the board? Go ahead.
Yes, Chair, my apologies. Those two items are administrative consistency determinations. If there have been no requests for these to be pulled, and therefore they are simply information items for the board, that those two items become entitled, and the consistency is found consistent by the executive officer if there is no appeal.
I'm sure Supervisor Potter wanted to have unanimous approval of at least some action before we adjourn for the day. Exactly. Any other items from members? Yes, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually just had a question on the HCP. What number is that? B. 10B. Says that the screen check draft Habitat Conservation Plan is hoped to be available by the middle of January of next year. Does that mean it's the that's sort of the draft that's available to the for public review, or
Jonathan?
What?
It's not the public review draft, it's the pre-public review draft. The wildlife agencies and permittees will just review for looking to see that their comments were addressed. So it should be a relatively short review.
And while you're there, so what does that tell us about when the public review period might start?
So that review period should hopefully last no more than 3 months, and then we'll go to the public draft.
Thank you.
Any other items from members? Yes, ma'am.
Well, we had a question about the HCP schedule too, and we noticed that the public review period has slipped by about a year in scheduling it. In January, it was going to be August of 2014, and now it's sort of mid next year. Can you explain why the delays?
I believe Jonathan made it pretty clear in this report. A couple of things happen. One, we continue to get requests for reviews of the underlying documents, including some from folks that are interested in how the trails situation gets developed. There was a considerable amount of time our consultants had to use working with UC, City of Marina, and others about the Marina Airport and the UC areas and how those affected. It took their time away from completing the responses to the regulators. This is a case where the regulators didn't do it, we shot ourselves.
Yes, Councilmember Beach.
On the final item, is it H or J? J, the Marriott. I had emailed with our Chief Executive Officer about whether or not we would see the actual project in front of our own eyes, meaning not just hear it described with words, which is very difficult to get your head around when you're talking about a building. And he informed me that that is something that only happens on appeal. So if I or another member of the board was interested in contesting the consistency, then we would see the item actually in other than words. And I just want to point out that I'm uncomfortable with that process. I don't know, as you know, I know that I'm not exactly a layperson when it comes to buildings, but I am much more comfortable knowing whether or not I am comfortable with a project and whether or not to appeal it if it is presented to me in visual form. And so since that does not seem to be the FORA procedure, I just want to raise that because I don't think that's logical. I know that maybe this is a time-tested, obviously time-tested. We're more toward the end of FORA than we are toward the beginning of it. So I know that this has been going on for quite a while, but I, as a non-lay person, am not comfortable with that procedure. And so I don't actually know whether I should have appealed that marine thing. Probably should not have, but I just don't know, and I don't know whether that's something we can take up as something to adjust or tweak. Not a big rigmarole, but just not limiting ourselves to verbal descriptions of projects that are actually visually having a visual and spatial impact.
I'm happy to talk with you about that process and describe it in a little more detail. Just to be very clear about this, the process we follow is the one that is part of our settlement agreement with the Sierra Club. It's specified that way in the master resolution. To amend that would require some negotiation and adjusting the settlement agreement. There are some other ways for us to be able to inform board members of how they can have visual access, and maybe we can incorporate that into this without having to go through the other part, and we're happy to talk with you about how that might work.
Okay, any other items, last items from members? I'd like, yes, Director Moore.
So I understand that Mr. Giffen and Executive Director Hulamard and Chair Edlin are going to give us a Christmas gift and not call a special meeting. So that being the case, I'd just like to wish everyone on the board a Merry and safe Christmas.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees with your admonition there. I would like to adjourn this meeting in honor and memory of Jim Arnold. He'll be missed. And again, everybody have a happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year. And we'll see you. Get your batteries charged, because next year, these meetings were just really lightweight. Next year, they're going to really be heavyweight, I'm sure. Okay, see you then.